It's a November 6, 2021, beautiful city of the villages in Florida. My name is Jong-Woo Han. I am the president of Korean War Legacy Foundation, which has more than 1,500 interviews of Korean War veterans, not only from the United States, but also from 21 other countries that participate in the Korean War. I've been to 21 countries and did an interview. I met a lot of Korean War veterans from many different countries. And we are doing this to preserve your memory. First of all, it's been a long time, right? So you mentioned about it, and we don't remember everything, but before we forget everything, we want to preserve your memory and honor your service. But at the same time, as I mentioned, we want to give this interview to our history teachers so that they can use in the classroom when they talk about the Korean War in the context of Cold War to their own students. That's why we are doing this. It's great honor and pleasure to meet you, sir, and thank you for coming with your wife, Barbara. And tell me, what is your birthday, sir?
What's it?
Birthday.
01/31/1933.
So you are very young. 88. 88 young. Where were you born?
Washington, D.C.
Oh. And tell me about your family background when you're growing up. Your parents and siblings.
My father passed away 2 months before I was born.
Oh.
And my mother raised us in Washington. My mother was a lawyer assigned to the Interstate Commerce Division, writing up laws. I went to approximately 7 schools during my time, and I had difficulty in school and difficulties in language in particular, and I also had a lack of supervision. My senile grandmother passed away when I was 12, and my mother was sent us to a boarding school for 3 years, and back to another couple of schools. And so I didn't do well in school, and I told my mother I wanted to join the service because I didn't have any vocation.
When was it? When did you join the military?
After I turned 17, she signed for me, and I was sworn in the Air Force February 9th of 1950.
And what high school did you graduate?
I have a GED from the military.
Okay, later, right?
Later, yes.
Yep. So you didn't know anything about Korea at the time, right? You didn't know anything about Korea at the time.
Had to look it up when the war broke out.
So okay, and did you look it up actually?
Yes, I did.
And what did you find?
I found that the Japanese held that country for 40 years or something.
45 years.
45
yes.
years.
Yeah.
Which astonished me. You know, how could this happen? You know, and so I later learned more about Korea as time went on.
Right. Later, what did you know about it, Korea?
Pardon me?
you said that you came to know more about Korea later, right?
Yes.
What did you know?
Well, we had not a lot of contact with the civilian population because we were always isolated up on top of a mountain with our radar. However, on one occasion, we had to carry backpack equipment up to the top of a mountain. And on the way, there was a little hut with a family in that little hut. And they had a fire going. And my friend and I, we walked in, and they offered us some sake, milk sake. And I tasted it, and it was terrible. So I never had sake again. But anyway, here's this family providing us some of their supper, you know, and I was very impressed by that. Huh. And I mean, we had guns on us, and we didn't know if they were afraid of us or what. But that was a nice experience. But we had not a lot of experience. On occasion, when we were set up on a mountaintop with our equipment, we had the Korean Army out of sight and down the hill and surrounding us to protect us from anywhere. Yeah. And well, we never saw them or talked to them. But it was interesting that we started to realize that our outfit didn't have any real combat experience, which bothered me, and or training. And we had our little guns, 30 caliber weapons, and that was it. On our last assignment, on top of a mountain, we were there for 6 months, and we did get a 50 caliber machine gun, and so that was the extent of our armament, and so that was and our outfit followed. Our outfit was the 606 AC&W. Mm-hmm. And that was part of the 502nd Tactical Control Group. All of our equipment fit in 6x6 trucks, military trucks. Mm-hmm. And we followed. It was a completely mobile outfit. And we followed the Army and the Marines north. And we camped in a spot. There was a few little houses. They were empty. And I want to say that the town was Sinanju, but I'm not clear on that. I can't remember exactly the name of that town. I'm terrible with linguists. So we set up our 12-man tents, and this would have been sometime in November. And we knew we were in the back. The Marines and the Army was somewhere north of us. We set up our 12-man tents, and we set up our equipment. And I've never been so cold as that assignment in my life. We, most of us had 5 layers of clothes on, mittens and gloves underneath if they had their own. We had to connect coaxial cable to the back of the various trucks. It took 3 of us on the wire crew to do that. And we probably did no longer than a minute to do a screw in the cable and
because
get back
it was
into,
too cold.
back in the after a minute we went back to our gloves and somebody else took over, and that's the coldest I've ever been in my life. And doing guard duty, I think it was 4 hours at a time, and I was stationed on the back of a building in complete darkness, and I was terrified. With my little gun and no further equipment if the enemy came, and we started getting concerned about the Chinese. Rumors were running around, and I think we were there a week or 2 weeks.
Where were you?
Pardon me?
Where were you?
The only town I can remember was Sinanju.
Sinanju?
I think so, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I just can't remember the town. All I know is that we were all by ourselves, and we were 35 miles from the Yalu River.
Whoa.
In November of 1950.
Okay.
And I can't remember how many days we were there, but all of a sudden we were ordered to grab our personal things and our weapons, get in the trucks, and leave everything behind. And we did. We left our tents and whatever we could carry, we got in our trucks and headed south. And that's because the Chinese had come across the river. And we were quite fortunate to get down to Seoul and Busan and so forth, in that several other outfits were attacked with Koreans and so forth. North Koreans were on the sides when the Americans and the Allies went. They didn't go very far to each side, and they just keep going north, and they left maybe hundreds of enemy soldiers in the back. So, and all of which was frightening to me, and until we got south, and once we did, we got one particular mountain, and we set up our I guess we were there 6 months before I was rotated out, and since we were a technical outfit and non-combat outfit, our tour was 18 months. With the combat troops had 12 months. And I rotated out in February of 1952. And this was an interesting year in that it was 7 years after the Japanese signed their surrender
Yep.
and their retreat. And I would guess that in August, after 7 years, they would have their complete freedom. And they were already building. The Japanese were all started already. So that was interesting to see this country after 7 years after war.
So when you came down from Yalu River, okay, and you went to Seoul and you went to Busan, and you were stationed in Daegu or Suwon? Does that ring the bell?
I was stationed in Daegu,
Daegu.
which was flat, and we were next to an airport.
Yeah, K2.
Yeah. Okay, yes, that's right. And one story I can remember is the word came from the radar group that a Corsair, a Navy Corsair, was coming in, and we had that's the most beautiful plane we've ever seen, and we all ran out of our work spots and watched this Corsair come in. He had his window back and a white scarf. I'll never forget that. And he just right in front of us, he flew, and that was something. And since I was a smoker from the time I was 15, and once we got to Daegu, and we were next to the airport, and we were next to airplane fuel, there was no tobacco and no cigarettes or anything. So I acquired a short habit of chewing tobacco while at Daegu, and but we were there a short time, and I can't remember if that was before we went north or after. But Busan, we were near the port, and we were living in what appeared to be a school. Mm-hmm. I can't even remember if Seoul was bombed. It was, to me, it was a very large city, and I only had one shot driving through in a truck or something. Mm-hmm. And most of our time was up on a mountain, with the exceptions of Busan and Daegu.
But when did you leave to Korea from the United States? When did you leave from the United States to Korea?
Late August or early September.
Mm-hmm. Of 1950.
Of 1950. And traveled to Yokohama in 13 days, and overnighted on the ship, on the troop ship in Yokohama. And then the next day, we went over to Busan Harbor. And I have some papers at home that indicate that sometime in September, we arrived in Korea.
And how was the situation in Busan? Was there still battle going around?
No.
Not really?
No. I don't remember any battle. Our last assignment on this mountain, I think it was about 10 or 15 miles outside of Seoul. And we did a good job of clearing space for our trucks on the top of the mountain. And that spot, and I can't remember the name of the town, but that's the assignment where we had our 50 caliber machine gun, because the Chinese were coming in at night in biplanes, and our radar people would pick them up, and what was interesting about our radar, they would pick up these bogeys, if you will, and the controllers, which were officers, would look for a American plane, Army, Navy, Air Force, they didn't care, and send that plane after the bogey. Sometimes they would find them, sometimes they wouldn't. But we had, I think, a unique problem on that particular mountain. We had biplanes coming at us, and we were not allowed to shoot because they didn't want our guns to light up, including our 50 caliber. And one controller in particular, and I don't know his name, and don't remember, but he was able to control our planes to shoot down the bogeys. And on his tour of duty, he was able to control our planes to shoot down 5 enemy planes, which made him a control ace in the Air Force. And we were quite proud of that. And on one occasion, after being frustrated with these Chinese planes flying by and not allowed to shoot at them, we finally encouraged our sergeant, who has since passed. I think his last name was Bill Farmer. We encouraged him to shoot. He was the former Army in the Second World War, and so he had seen combat, and we didn't know how much, but he was assigned to the 50, and we all started screaming at him to fire, and he did. And a couple of short bursts, and then we got a phone call from down below wanting to know, have they heard any shooting up there? And of course we denied it. So, but it made us feel good. I must say that.
Yep.
So it was a real experience for me. 18 months in Korea. I had one R&R to Japan during my 18 months. So I got 2 or 3 days over in Japan, Tokyo. And but the rest of the time was strictly Korea. Um, the I had never been in an airplane before the service, and to do my R&R in Tokyo, they provided a DC-3, and in this particular one, the cargo door was missing, and there was a rope across the cargo area. Mm. And I think it was January, and we looked at the stars out of our plane, and wondered if we were going to make it to Tokyo, which we did. But that was my first airplane flight in a DC-3, which after the war came to be known a DC drug plane.
What about your unit was 502 Tactical Control Group?
502 Tactical Control Group, yes.
And
that was my one level up. The squadron that I was in was the 606 AC&W, and there was, in that regard, and in that group, there was the 605, 6, 7, and 8. And I think all of them came after 606. We were there first.
What's ACMW?
AAT.
ACMW, what is that? You said you belong to 606 ACMW.
AC&W. It'll come to me in a minute. 606
okay.
AT&W, AC&W.
It's okay. So, where did you sleep and what did you eat? What's the living condition there?
With a couple of exceptions where we took over a school in Busan. Mm-hmm. We lived in 12-member tents. Mm. And on my last assignment, that 6 months on the mountain, they built Quonset huts for the troops up there. So we had Quonset huts that held maybe 20 people, probably 20 soldiers, airmen.
Do you know why Korean War has been known as Forgotten War?
Well,
do you have any idea why?
Well, firstly, they're still at war legally.
Yeah.
And North Korea won't move in their requirements.
Yep.
The North Koreans have the American machine available to come back to Korea, and while they're shooting up bombs in the air, that's just the show what they can do, and show with their army how big their army is marching down the thing. And my concern is his mental condition. And he and his family, they just, the population is, when they get a chance, they go over to China. Mm-hmm. That's a big problem for North Korea. There are citizens fleeing over that Yalu River.
Yep. So what would you say to Korean people now about the Korean War and its legacy? What would you say to the Korean people?
Well, I'm not a student of this sort of thing, but I would say keep on producing, making money, taking care of their citizens, and working with the Americans and other allies, in case we have a new war. It's.
I hope that there's no another war there.
Of course not.
Right.
But because of their armaments and their bombs and their guns and their number of people, they could cross the DMZ there, and in 1 million people. So it's frightening. What they could do, and of course we could send troops back like we did before, and help those that are on the ground. But it's frightening. It's just like the Japanese coming across the. I read a few books about the Marines up there in that place, and they just come across in hordes, And nowadays, the Koreans are all equipped. They're all equipped with the same machine gun, and they're all equipped with, and so they pose an enemy that could strike any time. That's what bothers me, and we can keep sending more troops, and hopefully that president is going to be removed somehow, and he's certainly not going to be voted out.
Right.
But,
You're right.
You know what I mean. So that, but it got me. My GI Bill got me through college. I transferred to University of Tampa, and I got a degree down there in physical education. So, and I had a job. I thought I passed the government test, and I was waiting for my job, and I went to visit my mother in Miami, and the job did not come through, so I became a deputy sheriff.
Oh, you became the police.
Yes.
Good.
And from after 6.5 years, I made sergeant after 5 years, and after 6.5, I resigned and became an agent with the U.S. Secret Service.
Oh.
And I retired in 1986 and became a deputy in Broward County Sheriff's Office. So I have 37 years in law enforcement. And
So where did you work at the Secret Service? Was it in Washington, D.C.?
My first assignment was the Miami field office. They have field offices all over the country and now all over the world. And I was in the field office for 4 years, and they transferred me to Washington. And I was in the forgery division. And after 2 years, they transferred me back to Miami.
Miami.
And I finished my career there. So I had 19 plus years in Miami and 2 years in Washington.
Mm-hmm. Your last name is Lindsley, right?
Yes.
L-I-N-D-S-L-E-Y.
Correct.
Good. So, what would you say to American students about the war that you fought for?
It's not for everybody, as you can imagine. And they have difficulty recruiting on some occasions, the Army in particular, I would think. And so we have to prepare for war. And China is a threat, as well as Russia is a threat. But North Korea, I would say, is worse. It's closer to a shoot-'em-up war. And we need to be prepared. And there's various avenues to take. There's either join the service or help developing guns and bombs, like everybody else. So, and what's frightening about the whole mess is that everybody now, including Iran, has nuclear, which is really frightening.
Yep, it is very frightening. So I want to thank you for your service as a Korean War veteran, and that's how Koreans got the opportunity to rebuild their nation, and their economy is now number 10 in the world, 10th largest economy in the world.
And look at the size of that country.
Yeah, small, like half of Florida state, and bigger than Indiana, a little bit bigger than Indiana.
Yeah.
But they don't have a drop of oil, and they don't have natural resources.
Right.
But they've been able to accomplish simultaneous economic development and democratization in a very short period of time. And they were able to do that because you fought there, okay? So
thank you.
Yeah, so we all know that, but they don't teach much about it. That's why we are doing this, okay?
Yeah.
And they're going to use your interview in the classroom so that they know what Philip did. You know, 70 years ago, he was up in the mountain in Sinanju, very close to Yalu River, and working on the radar. You went back to Busan, Daegu, Seoul, and all these things will be remembered in the classroom. Okay, so thank you for coming again for the interview. And we will edit this and we'll publish in the website that I gave you the business card there, right?
Right.
So you will be able to see your own interview from the internet, okay?
Right. Well, I thank you, Doctor. Like I said, it was a great experience for a 17-year-old that had never been on an airplane, and my family never had a car until I left, and my brother got the car. So it was quite an experience, and I wish I had known more about Korea, but they treated us as best they could.
Yep.
No question about that.
But because you treated them with your life, you know, you risked your life there and fought for the Korean people, and that's how they've been thanking back to you, okay?
Right.
All right.
Thank you again.
Thank you, sir.